1, 2.
Good morning, everyone. Let me thank you so much for coming out to this session. The Jamaica Umbrella Groups of Churches saw it fit to organize a session such as this for the church leadership to come into a space where we can share with you through the assistance of our Constitutional Reform Committee, headed by our minister, information as it relates to this very, very important process that we are embarking on. And so I just want to thank you for attending. Also want to acknowledge those who are online to say how much we are appreciative of you also joining us. And in a little while, we'll also be having those who will be able to join via the YouTube channel. But before we go any further, I'm going to be asking Bishop Everton Thomas to come and lead us in the singing of the national anthem. So I'm going to ask you all to stand. Immediately after he's through, I'm going to be asking Bishop Russell to come to do the opening prayer.
Good morning, everyone. The national anthem. Eternal Father, bless our land. Guard us with thy mighty hand. Keep us free from evil powers. Be our light through countless hours. To our leaders, great defenders, grant true wisdom from above. Justice, truth be ours forever. Jamaica, land we love. Jamaica, 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 land we love. Teach us true respect for all. Stir response to duty's call. Strengthen us, the weak to cherish. Give us vision, lest we perish. Knowledge send us, Heavenly Father. Grant true wisdom from above. Justice, truth be ours forever. Jamaica, land we love. Jamaica, 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 land we love.
Let us pray, bow our heads, everyone. Our gracious Father, we give you special thanks for today. We thank you, Lord, for this public consultation that is about to take place. And we pray, first of all, for it to be a very rewarding moment and time when we all will collaborate to make sure that this island, Jamaica, will be a special place. I pray for the Constitutional Reform Committee, headed by the Honorable Marlene Malloho Fort, and that, God, you will bless them in a very special way, that the proceedings and the results coming out of this consultation will be one that we will all be happy with. I beg you, Lord, to lead this island, Jamaica, as you have been doing. Keep us together in the bond of peace. And we pray, my God, that your will be done and your name will be honored. Because, my God, there's no other name above your name. and at your name every knee shall bow and every tongue shall confess. We pray, God, that you will have your divine way with us today. And we pray, God, that it will be a well-organized meeting and that, my God, a fulsome results will be obtained. We ask your blessings now in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you. You may be seated. Indeed, it's a pleasure, as I said before, for us to be here this morning to be looking at something of great importance to our nation. We are at a critical juncture in our country, one in which we are looking at this point, as it were, which way should we go forward? And so, with much prayer, we are going to be proceeding and asking God for his direction and for his leading. I really just want to say thanks again to all of you who have made it possible to be here this morning to share with us in this very, very important session. I'd just like to say that the umbrella groups of churches, for some of you who might not know, it comprises 7 different groups. And that is why it is referred to as groups of churches. So we have the Jamaica Pentecostal Union Apostolic. We have the Jamaica Evangelical Alliance. We have the Jamaica Association of Full Gospel Churches. We have the Jamaica Union Conference, the SDA, that's the 7th day. We have the independent churches in Jamaica. We have the Church of God in Jamaica. And we also have the Jamaica Council of Churches. So these are the groups of churches which come together to form the umbrella groups of churches. And this morning we have representatives from all these umbrella groups present. Give yourself a clap for being here. Yes, come on, give yourself a better clap than that. All right, so we just want to thank you. And then because we reached out for this particular segment for the heads of organizations, and so it's just a small segment that will be represented here in this face-to-face meeting this morning. But we have sent out the link so that the other leaders from these various umbrella groups can also join in. And momentarily, we are going to also be sharing with you the YouTube link so that those who are thus minded can also use that as an option to be a part of the meeting. Let me also hasten to say that it is set up in such a way that those who are not here face to face will also have the opportunity of asking questions, making suggestions. So we're going to ask you to use the chat and type those questions or comments in, and there will be somebody who will be monitoring those platforms to ensure that your voice is also heard. Those of you who are present, we will have a roving microphone so that at the appropriate time you will be able to indicate with the raising of the hand and share your concerns. I know that as Jamaicans, we are a big family, and so as our anthem speaks of the whole thing of respect for all, I am sure that as we share our concerns, it will be done from a perspective of respect, and at the end of the day, it's love. We always say one love. Right? So we just really want to come together as one. Our thoughts might differ, or perspective might differ, but let us do so in a manner that at the end of the day we'll be still proud Jamaicans. Amen? Can I get an amen in the church? All right. So thank you so much. I just want to introduce some of the members of the Jamaica umbrella groups of churches who are present with us. Some of them are not able to be here face-to-face, some are online. But those who are here, I'm going to ask our members to stand so that I can just acknowledge you so that others might see you and know who you are. They might hear the name, but they might not put a face to it. All right, so if I start way over there, I am seeing Reverend Peter Garth. Just wave your hands, Reverend Garth. Bless the Lord. We also have Bishop Alvin Bailey. Bless the Lord. Archbishop Kenneth Richards. And Bishop Russell, who you heard praying earlier on, and our moderator who will be taking us through that question and answer segment, Bishop Neville Owens. Put your hands together for them. Thank you very much. You may be seated. And we have with us, because when questions are to be asked and concerns are to be put forward and clarifications need to be made, then it's best to go to the source. And so in organizing this session this morning, we thought that it was prudent to bring those who are at source to share with you and also to give you the opportunity so that you can ask them questions, raise your concerns, and of course, make your suggestions. Because the whole process, as our minister who will come shortly will be telling you, it's one in which every Jamaican's voice is of importance. All right? And so I'd just like to quickly introduce members of the committee who are present here with us. Some aren't able to be here this morning, but nevertheless, we are so thankful for those who made it possible to be here. And so I just want to introduce to you our Honorable Minister Marlene Malibu Fort, KC, JP, MP, and the chairperson for the committee. We also have, and I'm just going in various orders, Senator the Honorable Tom Tavares Finson, OJ, CD, KC, and he's a president of the Senate and commissioner of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica. Put your hands together for him, wearing many hats. Then we have Minister Anthony Hilton, CD, MP, Parliamentary Opposition, the House of Representatives. Mr. David Henry, and he's from the Wider Society and the Faith-Based Group. Dr. Nadine Spence, Civil Society, Social and Political Commentator. Mrs. Lalita Davis Mattis, CD, JP, National Council on Reparation. And I think, oh no. And then we have a very special gentleman who gives us a lot of trouble sometimes. Right, Minister? Yes. And it is so good to have him here with us today. And so I just want for you to put your hands together as we make welcome Mr. Hugh Small, KC, Consultant, Counsel, and nominee of the Leader of the Parliamentary Opposition. And so this comprises all the members present here on the Constitutional Reform Committee, and of course, yours truly, Dr. Elaine McCarthy, representing the Jamaica Umbrella Groups of Churches. As I made mention earlier, we are going to be having our moderator to be taking us through this segment where you're allowed to make your comments, ask your questions, and all of that. And so right at this time, I am going to be handing over to our moderator to take us through that segment. Put your hands together for Bishop Neville Owen.
Thank you to our able chairperson, who is doing a tremendous job, availing herself to go over the country, parish by parish if necessary, so that the church would be given an opportunity to express its voice, statements, presentations, question and answer. To our hardworking minister, and we are praying much for her and her team going across the country, she turned up her beautiful eyes and looked at me to say, yes, yes. So we are all asked to do that. My brothers and sisters, members of the clergy, I greet you. This is the church's opportunity through its members and leaders to be a part of this most pivotal series of discussions, statements, question and answers as we move forward in this significant time of decision making. Time is limited. Many of you have stayed over with us from another meeting. We respect your time. And the limited time that we have, we want to use it wisely. So a roving microphone will be presented as you indicate by the raising of your hands, and we will give reasonable time to each person that would like to do so to make your input. I would appreciate when you do so if you would name yourself or state the organization, church group that you represent, and we would move on. And we will go through the process accordingly until each person is given an opportunity to express him or herself, and whether your question or statement will be answered by any member of the minister's choice to go forward in doing so. Thank you, and we bless you for making yourselves available. Now right into this session. I'll ask somebody to help us with this microphone. Okay. So this microphone will be passed on to the relevant committee members when that time comes. Now we want to open the session for the question and answers. On program, as is stated, the minister, the honorable minister, will be asked to come forward, make a presentation, after which we will move accordingly. So let us have the minister at this point.
Thank you so much, Reverend Owen. Good morning, everyone. I should like to begin on two notes. One is a note of confession, and the other is a note of gratitude. Let me start with the note of gratitude. I want to thank you for nominating Dr. Elaine McCarthy to the CRC. I am well pleased with her addition to the committee, and I do believe that you can be confident that your views and perspectives will be well represented, well heard. That's my note of gratitude. My note of confession is that I wanted to be a different minister during my childhood. I grew up going to church practically every day. So I'm warning you that this is a gathering in which I am very comfortable. Very comfortable. So I've told Dr. Bailey that if he thinks he is going to shove me over today, I'm going to ask Reverend God to stand in the gap. But I'm very pleased to be here this morning with you. And I thank our CRC member for organizing this very important consultation and engagement session. On the occasion of the 60th anniversary of the independence of Jamaica, the nation was invited to reflect on our achievements since attaining independence in 1962. The government was also invited to reflect And part of the reflection focused on the continued symbolic presence of the British Crown in the constitutional makeup of Jamaica, of the Jamaican state, as it is in other Commonwealth realm countries. Britain's presence in Jamaica is linked to the transatlantic slave trade and all of the atrocities associated with it. We can't undo the past. We can reconcile it, learn from it, and move forward. When we get a better understanding of it, perhaps we will better appreciate the present, and then we can also better plan for the future. So in the 6 decades since the enactment of the Independence Constitution of Jamaica in 1962, there have been 2 noteworthy periods of reform, the 1970s and the 1990s, which led up to about 2015. But at 2011, when the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom was passed, replacing the old Chapter 3 of the Constitution. Less of constitutional reform began with the establishment of the Constitutional Reform Division in the Ministry of Justice way back in 1977. The research and technical support of the division proved invaluable to a joint select committee on constitutional and electoral reform that was appointed in 1991. The mandate of that committee was to review the Jamaica Independence Constitution and make recommendations for its reform. Following the recommendations, it was agreed that a new constitution of Jamaica should be framed and that the Parliament should establish a constitutional commission charged with the responsibility of soliciting views of all Jamaicans and providing a report on the outcome of its consultations. The first and final report of the commission were submitted in 1993 and 1994, respectively, and it included an examination of Chapter 3, which was the Charter, which is now the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom. The report was tabled in Parliament in 1995. A green paper, which is a discussion paper on policies, was tabled in the Parliament in May 2007, and it proposed that following the next general elections, a bill providing for a new constitution should be brought to Parliament. The Green Paper did not depart from the recommendations made by the Joint Select Committee on Constitutional and Electoral Reform. In fact, it urged parliamentarians to acquaint themselves with the report with a view to advancing the implementation process. The Green Paper, among other things, said that the report presented in 1995 and subsequent deliberations have indicated a wide area of agreement that the assumptions that underlie the present Constitution no longer reflect the prevailing sentiments, either in the political parties or in the nation. Talk, a flurry of rhetorics and reform efforts. The fundamental institutional structures have remained unchanged. As a signal of his administration's seriousness about constitutional reform, Prime Minister Holness established the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs in January 2022. The mandate of the ministry, simple and clear forward. To take charge of and give focused attention to the government of Jamaica's legislative agenda and its legal and constitutional reform aspirations, and specifically to spearhead the most meaningful and comprehensive post-independence constitutional reform work to be undertaken in the nation of Jamaica. Building on the work previously done by the Joint Select Committee on Constitutional and Electoral Reform and the Commission, which had been set up to canvass views and did in fact canvass views. The goal in this regard is to ultimately produce a new Constitution of Jamaica. A new Constitution of Jamaica, keeping provisions that have worked well for us, with which we are familiar, while changing provisions which have not worked well for us and are out of tune with our development aspirations. The goal is to have a constitution passed by the Parliament of Jamaica, approved by the people of Jamaica. In other words, Jamaicanizing the constitutional reform process. We use the term Jamaicanizing because although the current constitution was prepared and drafted in Jamaica, it was not passed nor approved. It was not passed in the Parliament of Jamaica, and it was not approved by the people of Jamaica. It came into effect by an executive action at Buckingham Palace. So, in putting a new constitution together to replace the existing one, even though we will keep important provisions of the existing one, the goal is to establish the Republic of Jamaica as a parliamentary republic, to replace the constitutional monarchy, and to affirm Jamaica's self-determination and cultural heritage. Republics emerged as alternatives to monarchies. And that is a simple an explanation as to why a republic, but numerous questions about what the republic entails need to be answered. But simply to say, Republican form of government emerges an alternative to monarchical forms of government. Although much work has been done by the previous reform efforts, some important, substantive, and procedural issues remain unresolved. For example, moving forward, should we continue to have a referendum? What matters should go to the people for a referendum constitutionally? Embarking on yet another constitutional reform exercise at this time is to be seen as a further step for implementing agreed recommendations, while implementing recommendations on which consensus remains, while working to build a consensus where it has either eroded or is non-existent. With that in mind, the decision was taken to review the recommendations that were made and to consider having regard to the passage of time between then and now, what new thoughts need to be taken into account, what new developments need to be taken into account. It is against this backdrop that the High-Level Constitutional Reform Committee was established with an advisory and oversight role with respect to the reform work, which includes and is supposed to begin with a transition from a constitutional monarchy to a republic. Just to tell you a little more specifically about the role of the committee. Well, beginning with its purpose. Its purpose is to assist in providing expert guidance and oversight to the government and the people of Jamaica during the constitutional reform process, to, among other things, implement the recommendations on which consensus remains, while helping to build consensus where it has eroded or is non-existent, as I said before. In particular, the Constitutional Reform Committee is required to assess how the passage of time has impacted the recommendations of the Joint Select Committee on Constitutional and Electoral Reforms contained in the report that was tabled in Parliament and approved by Parliament. The committee is required to advise what fresh perspectives ought to be considered in the light of any new national, regional, or international development between then and now. The committee is also required to recommend any necessary modification to update the recommendations for implementation. The committee is to evaluate the recommendations on the establishment on the office of President for the Republic of Jamaica and advise on the nature of the presidency, the qualification and tenure of the President, and the legislative, executive, or ceremonial powers to be exercised by the President. The committee is also to assist in coordinating the required parliamentary, cross-aisles, and nationwide consultation and collaboration during the various phases of the reform work, and in particular, help to educate the electorate on their role in the referendum process in order to successfully transition from a constitutional monarchy to a republic, and to provide for related matters that go with that. Generally, the committee will agree on and guide the sequence of steps to be taken to implement the said recommendations and other recommendations that will come in the process for implementation to achieve the overall goal. The scope of the work. The committee is required to help guide the process through different phases. The work to break and make a constitution is complex and long. And the decision has been taken to do the work in phases in order to avoid failures of the past. Much talk. I said jokingly to Prime Minister Holness that of all the prime ministers who preceded him, he has spoken the least on the matter, and yet he has taken the most significant step to achieve implementation of the reform goals. Because, ladies and gentlemen, if we agree among ourselves unanimously, highly unlikely that you will get a unanimous decision. But if that were the case, that now is an opportune time to take another step in our independence process. And everyone agrees. Everyone agrees that perhaps Queen Elizabeth enjoyed a special place among the Jamaican people because she was on the throne when we became independent. But with the transition of her son, King Charles, whose ascension to the throne we have no control over, it's an opportune time. If we all agree on that, we will not get the change unless the Constitution is changed. So wanting change is not the same thing as taking a concrete step to achieve the change. And I think you know how that works when you embark on your mission to change lives for the kingdom. So the work is divided into 3 phases. And the reason why the work is divided into 3 phases is because the Constitution itself has 3 different types of provisions. They are categorized according to the process that is required to change them. Jamaica has one of the most complex constitutional reform process. All constitutions, as supreme laws, give a certain level of importance to certain provisions. And the more important the provision is, a greater protection is given to it, making it more difficult to change. So that political parties, in the heat of the moment, through political expedience or to gain one-upmanship, that they are not able to change without the approval of the people. Because in a democracy, the will of the people stands supreme. But we are in a representative democracy. We elect our representatives, and through that process of election, we delegate to them certain duties and responsibilities, regardless of how you feel, whether they are performing the duties well or not. It is a fact that we operate in a representative democracy. Jamaicans do not pass laws generally, because it is a parliament that is empowered to pass laws for peace, order, and good government. And so the only time that Jamaicans will participate in passing a law is where the Constitution says that a bill to change certain provisions of the Constitution must be approved by the electorate after that bill has been approved by both houses of Parliament with a supermajority vote of 2/3 in each house. The only time. Where we are now with our Constitution, we, committee, I as minister, have absolutely no choice in the list of matters that require a referendum. Those matters were set when the Constitution came into effect. I don't choose them. They are set. The process to change the Constitution was set at independence. Unless in this process we agree to a new process to amend the Constitution, we will be left with what we have. A slow, complex process which requires certain matters to be approved by the people before any change can be made. During the question and answer, we can go into what those issues are. Phase 1 of the work. Phase 1 of the work is designed to focus on what we call the repatriation of the Constitution. We have had a robust internal discussion whether it should be patriation or repatriation, whatever it is. Let me tell you what it simply means. A process of ensuring that the Constitution of Jamaica going forward is a constitution passed by the Parliament of Jamaica, approved by the people of Jamaica. And in this phase, we would abolish King Charles III, King of Jamaica, King Charles III, King of Jamaica, and Queen Camilla as our monarch. I know many of you think of King Charles III as King of England, but constitutionally, King Charles III is King of Jamaica. King Charles III, King of Jamaica, and Queen Camilla as our monarch, in whom the executive authority of Jamaica is vested, and who is one of the tripartite parts of our parliament. Our parliament comprises the monarch, a senate, and a House of Representatives. King Charles III, King of Jamaica, and Queen Camilla. Phase 2 of the reform. So before I go to phase 2, phase 1 is intended to deal with those provisions that require referendum to change. It's the hardest process, it's the deepest process, but the provisions here, by and large, protect the continued presence of the monarch in the makeup of the state at the highest level. Symbol of the headship of our nation continues to be linked with a painful colonial past of the transatlantic slave trade, the oppression and enslavement of our people, and everything else that has come with that. Phase 2. In phase 2, we will look at the next set of provisions that are protected, but they are not protected to the extent that they require approval by the people directly to change them. They require simply 2/3 majority of both houses of parliament. And the way the Constitution is structured, it requires consensus between opposition and government. And by the way, the same consensus is required to change those provisions that have the highest level of protection. We call them the deeply entrenched provision, because essentially there will be nothing to go to the people to approve if the two sides in Parliament do not approve it. Constitution, in its wisdom, anticipated that there may be circumstances in which both sides may not agree in the upper house. Right now, the ruling Jamaica Labour Party would have 2/3 majority in the lower house to pass a bill of the nature. If the opposition does not agree, the Constitution says you can still go to the people, but the threshold for the vote is a higher threshold. But Prime Minister Holness and his team has decided that at a time when we need to bring the country together, we wouldn't want to proceed without getting cross aisles agreement and consensus, because we know that the electorate is also divided along party lines. The Constitution doesn't say the people generally vote. The Constitution says the electorate, and we know that the electorate votes along party lines, because that is what it is. That is what our competitive democratic process specify. So in phase 2, we would deal with the matters that require the two sides of the parliament to agree. And in this phase, we have the exciting matters around the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom. Let not your heart be troubled. Let not your heart be troubled. We are not moving to take down the guardrails that I know the church community pay particular attention to. So let not your heart be troubled. Or what they say, fret not thyself. Also in this phase is the issue of the final court. Right now, there is no consensus on what that final court should be. Parliamentary opposition is a strong advocate for the Caribbean Court of Justice. Many of the supporters of the Jamaica Labour Party are saying that the government should consider an option like what obtains in Trinidad, where the Judicial Committee, the Privy Council, is retained for some time while we work out the option whether to go to the CCJ or to establish a Jamaican final court, which can be modeled on, for example, the Hong Kong model. It will take some time to discuss that. I'm simply saying that at this stage, there is no consensus on that issue. But the issue of the final court is not one that has to be determined now. It's not a matter requiring a constitutional referendum. It's not a prerequisite to Jamaica becoming a republic. However, the question is, since this court began as an advisory committee to His Majesty. And for Jamaica, who still has the King as our head of state, matters that go there, when the decision is taken, it is in a form which says that they humbly advise His Majesty to allow the appeal or dismiss the appeal. Country like Trinidad and Tobago, that became a republic in the 1970s, still uses a Privy Council because the Privy Council has evolved as a full-fledged court in its own right, not attached to the monarch, but for Jamaica, that attachment is real. There are real issues around access to justice. So there are a lot of things that we will have to discuss. And I think we will have to discuss these publicly. But because we don't have consensus yet, and part of the committee's role is to help to build consensus on the issues, this matter is in phase 2. This matter is in phase 2 because it does not require a constitutional referendum to make the change. Phase 3 will bring us looking at making a full assessment of the constitutional and legal makeup of the nation and putting the pieces together for a new constitution. Already within the committee, there is a recommendation to consider a proposed drafting strategy which would bring everything all at once. We will have to discuss that matter internally because there are strengths and weaknesses to that approach. And the matters that are of particular concern to you, the church community, are matters that are in phase 2. And there is no way we could really rush to deal with those matters. What we propose to do in phase 1, some people have said, seems like a rush. The truth is that those who have spoken caused us to conclude that there was broad consensus that we should abolish King Charles III, King of Jamaica, as our head of state and replace him with an office of President of the Republic of Jamaica filled by a Jamaican, and we would agree the qualifications and the powers to be vested. A lot of questions have been raised about executive and non-executive titular and all that. Those are important matters that we will have to discuss, and I will leave them for the question and answer. I believe that my overview has taken up much of the time. I still have more to tell you, but I will pause now to allow for a more interactive exchange. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for the overview of the constitutional reform process known to the nation. May also remind us that some have been invited across the island to join us through the online process and will be advised as to their participation as we want them to be a part of what we are doing here today. And this is just the first leg, because Kingston will see many other legs of the church across the 14 parishes and 3 counties. Now to the anticipated time of discussion. Please, one microphone will be over this side, another will be over this side, and as soon as you're acknowledged, you will be expected to name yourself, what organization you're a part of, and we will proceed. I'm acknowledging Bishop Bailey from over here and my brother from over there. Bishop Bailey will go first.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Minister, for the presentation and for the overview. In the light of what I call sustained suspicion on the whole procedure and the committee, I mean, I had my own. No, please don't. Please don't. I'm behaving myself, Minister. I still, the question is, against the background of that, is there any policy of secrecy, gag order on any member of the committee, unavoidable urgency or that governs the policy, procedural imperatives, or oversee dictates that govern any aspect of foreign foreign? Does any overseas institution, organization, or country has anything to do?
Dr. Bailey, break it down.
That's what I'm doing.
Break it down.
Right.
Let's go straight to the heart of the matter.
Yes.
Can me tell you, say my tongue don't join
I know.
church
And
when I'm in church?
and can I tell you, you have answered some of the questions already, but I'm representing a constituents. But yeah. Is there anything that the committee can say? Either because at this point in time you're not permitted to say, so there's a secrecy. Is there any gag order? They are not permitted to say some things, but you can, or somebody else, the Prime Minister can. Is there any unavoidable urgency? Meaning, is there a deadline why there seems to be a kind of rush, right? Or any other overseas, foreign entities, country, individual, Prime Minister, United States President, that is speaking to us doing what we are doing, and so he has expectation. And finally, is there any procedural imperative? In other words, you must follow a stipulated guideline that we don't know about, that governs the process. And then, are you able to tell us the cost and who is paying for the whole process?
I think each committee member can assist in answering the first question.
Yes.
About whether there is any gag, starting with Pastor Head.
Yes.
Bishop Alvin, there's no gag order. There is absolutely none. We are free to speak our minds, and certainly in the context of the committee, we have had very robust discussion, and certainly in terms of what is presented to the public, we are entitled to express our view. Should I stop there? And then, what's the second one you asked? Secrecy?
Unavoidable urgency, why there seem to be a kind of mad rush, and there's overseas dictates and then procedural imperatives.
So let me speak bluntly. In terms of the timeline which was set for tabling of a bill in the House of Parliament, that was not set by the committee. That was a government's position. And committee members have indicated concern with respect to that timeline. We felt it was unattainable, and it would send a certain signal to the public that what we are doing is a fait accompli, and that we did not wish for meaningful consultation. The government has indicated that they will be moving that timeline because of the concerns that we have heard, as well as concerns that are also expressed very clearly on the committee. So as far as we are concerned, there's absolutely no rush. Overseas dictates, I am not aware of any overseas dictates. None of that impacts my own involvement on the committee. Others can speak for themselves. Cost and who is paying for it? Others can speak to that.
I think the only overseas dictates for me is the idea of King Charles and Queen Camilla. Yeah. So for me, that's a huge thing. You can look at the people at the table. Where are the people at the table? Do you think anybody can stop with and talk? Me just ask you, me just say, all of us here actually sit at the table, including all of these people are in the room deliberating. We are not foreign. And I say that because I hear the conversations, and yesterday we were saying, are they talking about us? We know you, all of you. You know us. We are one small country, and we know each other, and you know us, and you've met us. So why would all of a sudden people begin to distrust our motives? If you know us, this is not the first time you're meeting Dr. Henry or Dr. You know us. So no, I don't think that some of the questions that have been asked are fair and are authentic and are reflective of the relationships and the experiences that we've built as people living in a country as small as this one, right? So I think that I want to ask the people who ask those questions, who overseas is leading you to ask those questions? Because I can be suspicious as well, I'm a citizen. That's one. So I want to throw it back to those people who are asking the questions about why we are suspicious. Why are you suspicious? Are people outside of Jamaica causing you to be suspicious? That's the other one. And as it relates to how we deliberate, we are quite free, as I said, to say what we want to say and how we want to say it. And I think you can attest to that.
Okay, reasonably so, right? Yeah, reasonably so, and
May I just intervene?
Yes.
I don't think it's any secret that many times we have had a history where passing a law is a condition precedent to our getting overseas financing. Passing a law is as a result of obligations that come within the international community. Fortunately for us, our efforts to reform the Constitution of Jamaica has no such strings attached, bottom line. So I know the concern. I know the concern. For a long time, we have not been able to fund our development goals. We get assistance in the international community, and they come with strings attached and agenda. And there are many examples that have caused the church community in particular to be wary. And in fact, it is in those circumstances I am personally grateful for the vigilance of the church. So let's kind of move it beyond that.
Yes,
but the truth is that we operate in a deep trust, in an environment where the trust is broken, and we desperately need to build it. The throwing back of the question, I don't think it was intended for you personally, but we also know that there are numerous groups whose operations are funded externally, and as part of that, they are mandated to raise questions. And I think it is in that context, because Dr. Spence is a civil society rep, and she's particularly familiar with the environment. And I think the throwing out to the audience is perhaps to the wider.
She heard your response, because for a moment there was some element of distraction. But you know, the nation, though they anticipated and expected, a process of information and education did not precede the establishing of the committee. Secondly, you know where we are, again, because of the suspicion you had that. And Jamaica is that kind of PMP, JLP thing from a long time. So therefore, that also breeds suspicion. But then, and there is a foreign national who is not here now, and who is a member of the committee, and his position was qualified, except after I would have asked the question, if we lack the expertise and why his name should go down. I got those answers. But then, madam, no, let me just finish and I'll sit. I promise I will do sit. The representation on the committee, in my estimation, would have lacked a representation of the wider Jamaica. For example, the trade union, the private sector, the legal fraternity, well, a lot of lawyers are there, but the entity that represents the legal fraternity. It was just
you will make the rest of pastors in here come and put you down to your seat, because many of them are raising their hands.
They jump out at me, right? Madam Honorable Minister, and I just want to know that nobody from overseas informed my question. Overseas practices have, but not anybody. Thank you,
Dr. Bailey. Thank you. Since I'm the only elected representative in the committee, the Honorable Tom Finson, sorry, Anthony, both of us. Sorry, Anthony, I didn't realize you were here. The two of us are elected representatives. I've had to grapple with this love-hate relationship with our democracy and the cussing out of the political process, because we do know that there are many things that have not inspired confidence in the way the politics has been practiced. But the truth is that the essence of a democracy is competition in the politics. A freely, periodically elected legislature is the foundation on which we build our democracy. And I have said to my colleagues that I came into politics because I prefer to light my candle instead of cursing the darkness. There were many things that I didn't like, many, many things. And as I grappled with the kind of contribution I wanted to make, when Prime Minister Golding extended an invitation to me through my husband, and I went through a process of deciding, because at that time I was to take up an appointment at the Supreme Court. I was on the bench. And I came in this side. I am just amazed how in one breath there is a call for new people, and the minute you come in, everybody takes the same brush and paint you. And you get no space. It's as if they want to disable you before you are sufficiently enabled to make a proper contribution. it is such a schizophrenic place. Dr. Elaine and Dr. Henry know every day I beg for prayers, because where he sends you, he will equip you. And he who has begun the work is faithful to bring it to completion. So if you want, we talk church, we can talk church, but we have a whole online community. You have raised your concern about our international expert. Bear in mind, in a democracy, people have many views. Professor Albert is a distinguished professor. His liberal views on the matters that the church is particularly concerned with is no secret. But Professor Albert can't sway anybody comprising this committee in any way. When we come to phase 2 of the reform work, we will refresh the committee and we will broaden it. But right now, we have a process of forming subcommittees. So you spoke about a union rep. A union rep will be important for one of the subcommittees. We can't do this work without hearing, consulting, and engaging with the public. The process is constitutionally designed for consultation even after the bill has been tabled in Parliament, because the Constitution says that between tabling the bill, formally putting it before the Parliament, and before you commence debate on the whole text of the bill, 3 months must pass. What do you do with the 3 months? Time is to be used to ensure everybody knows what is in the bill. The Constitution also says that after you've concluded debate on the bill, 3 months must pass before you pass it. What is that time to be used for? To see what issues arose in the debate and whether any changes need to be made to the bill to take into account what has been debated. So, Dr. Alvin, there is no mad rush. But my God, if the work started in 70s, after the 60s when we gained independence, and we're in 2023 now, and we still haven't gotten it done, you want to tell me setting a timeline is ambitious? I just kind of wonder, because we know, or let me speak for myself, that there are some issues that the passage of time has impacted on. More liberal views. People, I think Daniel said it in my side conversation with him, call lies true and true lies. If you don't go with certain belief, you're being shut down. It's because we kind of know, said those issues are very thorny, why we have sequenced them in the second phase of the reform work. Because as a nation, we will have to reason out what Jamaica stands for. One constitution that I looked at in its preamble affirmed its Christian values. That's the Constitution of the Cayman Islands. One of the recommendations for this constitutional reform is to have a preamble. And in that preamble, we would kind of state what we stand for. No, in my constituency, almost everybody go to church. You think that I have the luxury of not being particular about the community? And also, I find that I can reason with them better around church activities. Somehow where the Spirit of the Lord is, you find a different heart and mind to talk to the people.
Thank you so much. We're going to take Bishop Roberts over there. Afterwards, we're going to go to some online questions. May I also ask everyone in the audience, please ask one question. May the answers from the committee be as reasonable and brief so that we can get in as much questions as we possibly can. Thank you for your cooperation. Bishop.
Good. Thank you, moderator. I have a question. Before the question, I'd just like to say to the minister, Madam Minister, Vita Sini Literis Moses. Okay. Life without learning is death, and that's our school motto. All right. So my question is, the last time I take a look at the Constitution. I just look at it, but I don't understand it. But I noticed it said to 2011, the amendments. What were the procedures used to amend the Constitution, if it was amended? And what's the difference between amending the Constitution as against reforming the Constitution?
Could I just take the other two questions from the front? It's okay. Archbishop, let me just deal with this. Let me hear your question.
There's reference that the reform of the Constitution is going to involve the process of passing a bill by Parliament and then approval by the people. But at present, I don't think there's sufficient education and informing of the people is at hand. And so if you're going to ask people to approve a renewed constitution, they're going to vote party lines. And you want to what we need, this process to emancipate people so that the process is not just about those with the academics or the legal mind, but we start educating our people at the base of this. Well, I don't want to say at the base, but throughout our country. And secondly, the movement from the monarchy to res republica, people need to understand what that means. So, I mean, we need to break down language for persons. So you have the rule of the sovereignty of the monarch. We're going to talk about the sovereignty of the people. What does that mean? And how do we explain that so that people can understand that? And so I think that one of the things should characterize this process, therefore, is transparency. We need to, why can't the deliberations taking place be televised so that people can see what is happening? The framework, that person you're working with now, that is made available publicly so that person can have access to know what the process is behind. And I think that, I don't remember the second part of my question.
All right, let me, I think I can probably, perhaps, in the process of a brief statement, indicate some of the answers that perhaps we are looking for here. You're not hearing me? Okay, good. Don't take it up. You want to come and do it for me? Well, yes, what I would like to do is just recognize the important points made in the two questions. The first related to how it is the amendment to the Constitution was done before, and the second, broader issues raised by the Archbishop concern the question of communication with the people of Jamaica. There are some things that, critical matters that we need to look at, and we need to appeal to this group to get across to the people of Jamaica. And the first thing that I would like to suggest, the first thing that I would like to bring to your attention, people ask the question, how is it that Barbados was able to become a republic so quickly without any issues? Has that entered your mind? How is it? How is it that Barbados just go to an election and the Prime Minister announced that they're going to become a republic, and they become a republic literally overnight? Well, there is a historical reason for it. The other thing that people say, and I have mentioned it to the minister recently because I heard it repeated, is that the 1961, 62 Constitution was done in secret. You have heard that as well. But people who say that do not understand the nature of society in Jamaica in 1960-61. At that time, the literacy rate in Jamaica, 70% of the people were illiterate. The official leadership of the church was all English people. there was no such thing as social media. There was one newspaper, The Gleaner, and Public Opinion, which was a progressive newspaper. The only organizations that were controlled by Jamaicans in 1961 were the political parties, the trade unions, and agricultural societies. So when people say in 1961 they didn't consult the people of Jamaica, there was nobody to consult in terms of organized groupings. And if you look at the 17 or 18 people that drafted this constitution, they were from a wide range of the Jamaican opinion that was available at the time. Ashenaim from The Gleaner, Vernon Arnett from Public Opinion, Norman Manley and Bustamante from the trade union and the political movement, Randolph Burke, agriculture, Fletcher, agriculture. So when people say that and the teachers, Howard Cook, Glasspool was there, Lightburn, a number of other young members of parliament. So when people say that the Constitution was born in secrecy, it was not. It was what was available at the time. Because once you got out of those groupings, you came into the colonial authorities. No. The essence of what we are doing here is, it is critical, as the Archbishop says, that we get into the psyche of the Jamaican people and let them understand exactly what we are doing here. People talk about the question of what is it really these people were thinking in 1961? Because it's almost an absurdity. Because you have a colonial power that is ruling the country. It is decided to grant independence to Jamaica. So the country becomes independent. And when they are leaving, they say, we're going to leave a representative with you, who is going to represent the Queen. And you're going to have to pay them. People say, and I hear it, what is the benefit to Jamaica? And I don't want to use the word, but it's a scam. They don't get that. Jamaica become independent and them turn around and start, we're going to leave this guy with you, and put him up on Hope Road. We're going to call the place King's House, and you are going to have to pay him every month. Do you know how much the taxpayer pays to maintain King's House every year? Almost $500 million Jamaican dollars. 400 and odd million Jamaican dollars. For we as Jamaicans to have a man representing King Charles and Queen Camilla. It is almost an absurdity. It's obscene. It's obscene. But there is a reason why it happened, And, when you look at the people that set up the committee and set up this and agree to this constitution, there is a reason why this has happened. And my uncle sat on that committee. And I try to understand how it is these people could have sat. And Hugh Small helped me to understand it. 1961 in Jamaica was a time of great uncertainty. The Cuban Revolution had just taken place across the road. Haiti was going through its own issues. And there was a rise of black nationalism in Jamaica, which culminated in what the English persons refer to as an attempted race revolution in Sligoville. So there was a sense of uncertainty as to what is going to happen. There weren't two political parties, there were three, because there was the Millard Johnson-led People's Political Party. So the political class didn't know what was happening. They didn't know what the people of Jamaica were thinking. And therefore, they set about to make Constitution. This is just every bill that passed in Jamaica. It says Patrick L. Allen, Governor General, be it enacted by the Queen's most excellent majesty, by and with the advice and the consent, in other words, me give the Queen consent, of the Senate and the House of Representatives in accordance with provisions of Section 49 of the Constitution by authority of Her Majesty, the Queen Most Excellent Elizabeth II. Yes, that's the King now. And by the way, we go to bed one night, we wake up and turn on CNN and hear the Queen dead. And we lament. And all of a sudden, the Queen is dead, we now have a king and a next queen. None of those people, and I don't want to get into it, you know. But this organization, this group, because of their behavior over the years, none of you would support those people in the normal course of things. And I'm not going to suggest that they are adulterers, but their moral statute would never pass. Their moral statute would never pass this organization, and I know what I'm talking about. Some of the people on the platform don't know you. I know the capacity of this organization, and that is why I decided to speak. And I said it to the minister, if you can convince the people who are in this room, half of the battle is won. Hugh Small said it is obscene. It is, to me, it is remarkable. And I'm going to confess something to me. I'm going to confess something. The other day we had a meeting at King's House and we were talking to the staff at King's House. And this Governor General is a very good man. Very nice man. And I came out of the meeting and said to Dr. Spence, so England put the money in this thing. And she thought I was mad. Because in my conception, you have a representative here, and we as Jamaican have to find $400 million for somebody to run you off of the road with 4 outrider. I don't mean to be rude enough, but get the point that I'm saying. The other thing, and I'm going to sit down. Look here. People say, and I listen it, you know. I listen it. How are you going to pick the new president? Because politician this and politician that. The essence of a head of state that we need is not unlike a referee in a football match or an umpire in a cricket match. He is above the fray. When Jamaica became independent, the role of the Governor General was minimal. Head of state, him stamp document and so on. Over the years, the Jamaican political establishment has vested more and more powers in the Governor General. It is the Governor General now, for example, who is required to appoint the nominated members of the Electoral Commission. So we have given that person more and more power because we recognize the need to have this independent arbiter in the society, the umpire. And people say, well, how are you going to pick a Governor General? Well, I'm going to say what my personal view is. Jamaicans are very hard on ourselves. We are very critical. You hear what I just tell you a while ago? 1961, 7 out of 10 Jamaicans were illiterate. And we curse Jamaica, some of us, and we don't recognize the remarkable achievements that have been made in this country. When the Englishman them left here, is a crime scene, them leave here, you know. Hospital service, 0. Road, 0. School, 0. Police force, 0. We have done a remarkable thing as a country. And one of the remarkable things that we have done, we have been able to pick remarkable governor generals. Starting with Clifford Campbell. Clifford Campbell was a teacher from Malahoo Fort country there, Westmoreland. They used to call him Sugarhead. Anybody remember Sir Clifford Campbell? He became a remarkable governor general. Then there was Mr. Florizel Glasspool. Glasspool was a gentleman. Glasspool was a trade unionist that came out of the NWU. So people could say he was a PNP. But once he went through the gate of Jamaica House, nobody business with Glasspool where them are PNP or GLP. Glasspool was the Governor General during the turbulent times of the 70s. And he held the balance. Then there was Teacher Cook. Teacher. Trade unionist. Sir Clifford Campbell, I think, was a teacher. A churchman too. There a churchman coming up. Then there was Mr. Hall, an academic appointed by Patterson. Fantastic human being, great umpire, arbiter, great head of state. It's just that they are put in a position where they are representing the Queen. And now the present Governor General, who I think came from the establishment of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. So it doesn't bother me that people say who is going to be the next president, because whoever it is, our records show that when the time comes, when we are required to do so, Jamaicans stand up and be counted. And I pray that the revelation that come to some of us can come to the members of the church at the absurdity in which we find ourselves. The head of state is supposed to represent this country. He's supposed to represent legitimacy. The Constitution requires him to appoint judges of the Court of Appeal, judges of the Supreme Court. The list is almost endless. And we are paying a man to represent a man who is the King of England as of Saturday coming here. The English, 47% of the Englishmen, them don't want him. Hear me tell you now. When you look on the poll, 47% of the people, let me say, his moral turpitude don't suggest that him should be the king of our country. Yet still, we don't have a say in it. You go to bed one night and wake up with Elizabeth, go to bed with Elizabeth II and wake up with Charles III. One last thing. Material benefit. People, Jamaicans love ask that question. And I hear it the other day. What is in it for us? I want to know exactly what going on. What is in it for us? Well, if we do not get rid of this present constitutional status, Jamaica, just think about it, practical. We have to change every police uniform. We have to change every military uniform. Every stamp in the court system, every stamp in the government system, we have to change it from Elizabeth R. to Charles R. You think that is a little bit amount of money? Well, since we like to talk about money, make we talk about that. Plus the $400 million we have spent for King's House. Eh? Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay, dear little beloved, I don't want to miss my flight this evening. We have too many hands up. We said we were going to take one or two questions. Are we ready for those? May we have them now?
Good morning. Calvin Campbell says, good day to the chair and persons. Can a constitutional matter be statute barred? And will the new constitution have statute bar limitations?
Limitation periods are set in ordinary legislation and at the constitutional level. But I will have to hear a little bit more of the thinking behind the question.
Another question, please.
From Joseph Buckland. Is it necessary in a republic to change from the UK Privy Council as a court of final appeal, or may the republic continue to have the UK Privy Council as the court of final appeal?
I'm going to do two things. I'm going to answer that question, and the first question that was raised, I think is very important that as representative of the opposition in this process, that it be clearly understood. Firstly, strictly speaking, there's no, in the Constitution, there's no requirement in the current constitution that be so. There's no specific requirement. However, let me be very clear that the opposition's position on this is clear and consistent. For all the reasons Tom mentioned, and some more, which is, we don't conceive that you absent a constitutional specific provision, but that you can functionally remove the head of state and saying you're repatriating our sovereignty and you're decolonizing or you're Jamaicanizing and then leave the court behind. And then the next day, if a dispute arises, you have to go back and say, and I hear the formal distinction about the court now being formalized, but you're going back to the same king and queen to ask for an interpretation of your new constitution. We don't find that that is acceptable. Moreover, to get a visa, to go to your court, to get justice, we believe is an injustice. And let me say this, one of the practical consideration, now this previous speaker Tom spoke of the cost, and when people talk about the cost. One of the real benefits of this process to our people is justice, is the opportunity to seek justice for our people. For anyone in Jamaica, business or individual, to take a lawsuit up to and through to your final court of appeal, only the very wealthy businesses and very wealthy individual can afford that. We can no longer continue to deny justice to our people. Justice must be accessible. It must be real. And we don't conceive, notwithstanding any constitutional provision, but the functionality of a court and your whole system of governance that says that the three branches of government, two should be repatriated and one remain in England. That is unacceptable to the People's National Party. Unacceptable. Our dignity as a people, that you have a court in England and you have to get a visa, that you may or may not get it. Even the Governor General have to get a visa to go to the Queen. That is infra-dig, and let me make it very clear. I, as an attorney, as a former foreign minister, I've been in many meetings with representatives from, including the Privy Council, who have said to us, why are you not coming here? Why don't you just move on? Because some of the issues that we insist on in our own sovereign right, the death penalty, for example, they don't want to deal with. They simply do not want to deal with it because they don't conceive of a situation that the death penalty should be implemented. Some of us, in our own democratic process, believe that that should happen. Some people do. But they say no, it does not. So I'm just simply saying, for all kind of reasons, we cannot continue to loiter on the doorsteps of the UK, having repatriated 2 of our 3 structures of government, and we're saying the third, which is justice, that justice should remain. We don't conceive of it at all. Now let me say about the first question. I'm on this committee. Tom went into a little history about the process. My party, Michael Manley, started this process. We have been very integral in this process. So it's not conceivable. And the whole issue now of changing the constitution is not a party political issue. It's a major transformational issue. But through our lenses and our culture, it's unavoidable that that will be made so. But we are required, and my representation is to speak to a larger set of issues. Now I'm here as representative of the opposition too, on the committee, myself and Donna Scott Motley. And we have a special constitutional role, which is we have to protect and ensure that whatever changes are done, protect the rights of the people. So we are here as opposition, but we also have a constitutional role, which is to ensure that the rights of the people are protected. So nobody can.
Sorry to cut you. There's a specific question for you. Yeah. They're asking, is the PNP linking their support for abolition of the monarchy to the CCJ?
No, and we have answered that many times, and let me use the opportunity again. We have said that we recognize, so for example, that the Constitution, the levels of protection in the Constitution requires, as the Minister outlined at the beginning, different sets of procedure. The court does not require a referendum. So therefore, in the phase one that says we're looking at the deeply entrenched provision, there's a logic to it. But our point is, the larger point is, that in the overall scheme of decolonization, the court cannot be left behind in Britain in any logical contemplation. And therefore, we strongly believe that the court must come home, just like the other three branches of government. So we make no precondition about it. We have simply stated a very strong and clear position on the role for decolonization of the court. And we're insisting that that be considered, spoken to, and addressed in fundamental ways. But we can't, but sir, no one can speak to tell any of us, no foreign intervention can tell us what our position must be. That would be infra-dig. And in fact, I find the question insulting in a way, but it's allowable because we're in a democracy and people can ask anything they want to ask and say anything about any of us they want to say. And all we can do is just listen and be polite in our responses. But it is not a fair question. No, that we have to know, but foreign persons and certainly on gag business, no. I couldn't join anything that says I'm gag. I would never join anything that says I'm gag, never. So, and that's not our role, that's not our function. We have areas that we don't have consensus on, but that's not a reason not to talk. Right? We believe, for example, that the diaspora should have a meaningful role in any reform constitution. We believe that the youths, that the reason why we believe the consultation is critical is because since 1995, another generation has grown up that know nothing about that process. So we have to consult about the process. So there are areas where disagreement, but this is not an exercise where we have to be disagreeable and cuss each other and carry on, because someone said to me, and I said this and sit down, someone said to me just now and reminded me that one of the reasons people think so little of politicians is because we made to cuss ourselves and depreciate our own value and the things that we have done over years with the Jamaican people to build a sustained and a sustainable future for this country and a Jamaica that after what the British left in 61, that we can be proud of.
I think if young Thomas holds his hand up any longer, he's going to go home with severe pains tonight. I'm going to acknowledge you now, please. No.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Daniel Thomas is the name. I'm the president of the Love March movement and seeking to represent the young people, essentially. I have a question specifically related to phase 2 and the CCJ, but just prior to that, I really feel the need to express a concern related to one of the responses to the questions from Ms. Nadine Spence. I found that it was of people that have legitimate questions relating to government processes. I think that I would suggest that there is a consideration for even an apology to the people of Jamaica, because you insinuated that there are Jamaican citizens who are being paid off by other governments, and I think people have serious. I think people have significant concerns. I've never heard Gordon Robinson and Peter Esprit agree on something, in the recent articles that there are concerns about how the process is taking place, and I think that accusation was damaging to the process. And I think why we're here is that we want unity, and so I just wanted to humbly submit that. But my question related to the CCJ and phase 2 is that, Honorable Minister mentioned that we don't have to fret about the savings law clause. There's an angle that the savings law clause could be completely undermined, and that is via the CCJ. The president of the CCJ said last year that the CCJ is an executing agency for donor funds and named Canada and UN Women as those international persons that contribute to the CCJ, and so there's a significant concern about the independence of the CCJ related to certain internationally held ideologies, and so the concern continues that they ruled in a Guyana case related to cross-dressing, that cross-dressing should be legal in Guyana, and the reasoning was that the savings law clause was pre-independence and so did not really hold into consideration, and so there are significant concerns related to judicial activism and the CCJ. What exactly is the process that we will undergo as a country related to the selection of the final court? I understand that you're saying that it's not referendum, so what exactly will take place in that regard, seeing that there are these concerns?
Anybody wants to answer? I'm trying to appreciate the point you've made and tell me if my understanding of it is correct. That based on what you have read out loud, you are concerned that the CCJ may not be an independent arbiter? Is that?
Well, in the words of the president of the CCJ, that they are an executing agency for donor funds.
And the court itself is an executing agency for donor funds?
That is what he said.
Are you sure that's what
he said? Yeah, man,
says?
that is a quote of him. I have the video and everything. I could send it to you.
I can see how that would be of concern, because the court is not to be involved in the legal struggle at all. The judicial branch is to stand separate and apart. And any indication of any vesting in the legal struggle will raise questions about whether the institution is compromised, generally speaking. The savings clause have been pronounced on in another case that looked on lines of cases adjudicated on by the CCJ and lines of cases adjudicated by the Privy Council. It's a case of Chandler, I think number 2. It was handed down in the summer of last year. I invite your attention to it. And you will see, in essence, it recognizes that if your constitution provides for something, it can't be unconstitutional, even if you may say it seems anomalous. The work to change all of our laws will require focused attention. The fact that something may have arisen in a bad context doesn't automatically mean that it is bad. I think we know many examples that something can come out of a bad context, but it really has a lot of good and a lot of worth. It is for us to decide on that for ourselves. And I think among that is some of the laws that the savings clause is meant to protect. We will have to reason that out, because I know the issues that arise on the matters that fall in the ordinarily entrenched provisions of the Constitution touch people in real ways. The rights, the responsibility issues, even the courts. So we will have full-blown conversations. It is truly because there is no consensus at this time, and what you have raised is a concern in many other places. It may not have been raised like that, but bear in mind that the CCJ has good, high-quality judgments, and the court is enjoying a certain reputation while it still struggles to inspire confidence in the people of the region. So I wouldn't want you to go away thinking that it's all bad because something has been said, but we have to probe and we have to find out and get to the bottom of the matter.
I looked up the Google reference to which you spoke. I can say as a matter of certain legal knowledge that the only funding for the Caribbean Court of Justice is a trust fund that was set up when the court was being established, and that the only donors, the only persons that, the only institutions, the only governments that contribute to that fund are the governments of the CARICOM region, and that Jamaica is the largest donor to the funds that provide for all of the facilities of the CCJ. The trust fund is constituted by accountants and other persons from the Caribbean. The CCJ does not receive any funds from any external government. We are contributing the largest sum, we Jamaica, of all of the Caribbean countries, and I think it's a misunderstanding to characterize the words that were used as indicating any external funding. It is simply not so.
I'm getting in trouble now. I'm going to acknowledge Bishop Ron Edwards and Pastor Michael in that order, and then I come back to my front row. A microphone, yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and all the individuals at the head table. Let me take this opportunity to say I appreciate what Tom said earlier, that the monarchy left somebody here, and which we have to turn around and pay. But the monarchy also left something with us. We sit on top of our major emblem, which is the crocodile. I want to know, in which phase will you take that thing off our money? It has the Bank of Jamaica key in its mouth, and I'm not going near it. And also, it's on our security system. Everywhere you go in the army, the crocodile. So it has grown and it's creating mayhem in the country. When will you change it?
When my friend Elaine was introducing me, and very often we sit next to each other in the Constitution Reform Committee, and she dealt with everybody else, and then she came to me and said, and then there's a person who gave us a lot of trouble. Right, Minister? And the minister said yes. I give trouble because I raise questions like the one you just asked. But we're going to deal with a coat of arms to make it more relevant to us today. And I remember some statements that were made by Tom's friend, my friend and acquaintance too, Mr. Siaga, that question about that animal being represented on our coat of arms. These are all things that are going to have to be dealt with, because we are going to create some more symbolism that is more relevant to us today. Today I had a chance to speak to Muta Baruka on IRI, and I had to say to him, when he was questioning me about the benefit, I said, but Muta, it's you who say that symbols are important. And one of the things that I have said within the committee is that the time when Jamaicans really unite together and feel most proud of ourselves, despite all the divisive things that exist in our society, is when our people represent us internationally in sports and in cultural things. We come together. These symbols are important, and so I agree with you, Bishop, that we have to deal with that. Quick, because as it is, the crocodile is not a unifying symbol, but it's a process of establishing our identity that must come from this whole business of we are going to state to the world who we are, untarnished by the slavery symbols and untarnished by the Windrush mentality.
I just want to say that it is for this and other reasons why the work has to be phased. Because at the end of the day, we'll have to put together a constitution. If we wait, I would have transitioned on the wings of death into eternity. And we still don't get it done. So if we don't set a timeline that is ambitious, we'll never get it done. But it doesn't mean that it is set to shut out the people. We just can't do it all at once, but we take the hardest steps first, because once we take that step of changing King Charles III, King of Jamaica, and Queen Camilla as our head of state, then we will be on a different plane and we'll have different perspective. Can't be done all at once, and we can't put the whole constitution together at the start.
All right, thank you. May I go ahead? Chairman, I've just told Senator Finson that I've finally understood what it means when it says Tom Junk and Tom No Fool. But thank you, Senator Finson, for your history recollection. Chairman, I just wanted to just quickly ask my question, but I think it's important for me to at least remind our leaders here that in the United States, 65% of the population believe that people in society are trustworthy. In Canada, 77%. In Sweden, 79%. And in Jamaica, 15%. And that is something that we all have to come together as leaders and citizens to confront, because we have seen very, very clear evidence of the paucity of that number in our own country. I also want to just make it clear that young Thomas is here as reference, Honorable KC. There is in fact a reference to a project being managed by the CCJ to expand, to do legal reform in the Caribbean, and one of the projects was to establish a model court for sexual offenses in Antigua and Barbuda. So I'm not attributing any motive to that, but it is in fact true that they have a project funded by the Canadian government. So Mike McAnuff-Jones passed their Christian Life Fellowship. My question to the panel here has to do with executive authority. So the executive authority is vested in the Crown today, and it is exercised through the Governor General. And by the way, in British heraldry, the highest point in a coat of arms is where authority resides. So I understand Bishop's concern about the crocodile. Is there consideration being given in the discussions for the president to be able to exercise more authority in his or her own discretion? Because the current arrangements says that executive authority resides in the monarch, exercised through the Governor General, but in principle, the Governor General has to act upon the advice of the head of government and cannot act in his own authority on the most important matters affecting the governance of the state. So are we looking at giving the new president, in which executive authority will reside, more space to exercise himself in his own authority in situations that will be of immediate and ongoing value to the Jamaican people?
Thank you, Mike. That's a great question. We are, in fact, looking at what should be the powers, and it's a question that we want the Jamaican people to consider. What should be the powers of a president? Should we go that route? Should it be an executive president? In other words, has extensive executive powers. Some people are even, if you read what is in the press, some are even suggesting we don't need a prime minister. We should just have an executive president and, with extensive powers. And then there are certain president who exercises executive powers in sensitive areas, the appointment of your Chief Justice, the appointment of your President of your Court of Appeal, and a number of those areas. I say all that to say that that whole issue as to the role and function of the President and what his powers should be is something we all need to consider together. And we should be grateful for your contribution on that particular subject. I know there are views on both sides of the spectrum. So you have executive president, titular president, and what you could call maybe a hybrid situation. What should it be for Jamaica?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And, we've heard a lot. And my question is, and before the question, let me also say that it's good that we're having this forum today, because a lot of the information that's being shared from the committee has not been shared with the public, which is one of the reasons I think the outcry has come. There's a phrase in the American Constitution that it starts out, I think, with "we the people." And the significance of that phrase is that the powers that are given to government were not just coming from the framers of the Constitution or the legislators, but in fact, it's the people, the citizens, and in this case of Jamaica, who gives all power to the government. And so if there wasn't an adequate education and information process, then the public, including the church, cannot be faulted for being suspicious. As a matter of fact, someone has labeled it a false start. So yes, from 1972, Michael Manley raised it, but where has the information been as to what is taking place? I'm hearing for the first time about 3 phases, and it sounds good and it makes sense, Madam Minister. But please understand, the thing about Kings and King's House, I mean, that's not even really here now, because the president might cost more. We don't know, I'm just saying. It's still going to be a cost. But so we're not, But it seemed like there was a political agenda for this undue haste. And we wouldn't know that it's going to be done in phases, and so phase 1 is just the removal of the head of state, King Charles, King of Jamaica. Now we're understanding it. What is the committee going to do to ensure, and I heard you requested of the government, because you did not set the timetable, and that's understood, but you requested of the government to extend the time. What is the committee going to do to ensure that adequate, if it takes five months instead of 5 weeks, then that's what it is. But I think we, the people, need to know. Let me finally say, in 1961, Tom said it was only, 15% of the people that were literate. Today it's 30. Today it's 88% literacy, according to some sources. So it's a whole different scenario. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Thomas. Since I don't belong to any political party, I want to respond to that. And I want to express my mind freely and clearly on that issue. There's no way that I and a number of us are defending the timeline that was set. That was not set by us. And I'm not setting up myself against any other member of the committee in saying that, because we recognize that it was an unrealistic, though optimistic, overly ambitious timeline. And our own position is Jamaica is significantly ignorant concerning our constitution. I'm not saying that in a negative way, but as a reality. Ethics, civics not taught in our schools. So basic things that maybe some of us would have grown up on and understood in terms of how we are governed and so on. A raft of ignorance. Since 1995, new generation, new ways of thinking. Young Daniel, were you born before 1995? 91, you just made it, all right? But you're a little boy, all right? The point is, public education is vital, it's critical. And there's a subcommittee of this body, which has been appointed, to establish a kind of framework for that to happen. And we have said to the powers that be, there has to be a significant budget for that and a program for that to happen. And so that is what we are looking at going forward. We have indicated that from very early in the process, and it is going to be happening. So we are recognizing the need for public education, because that now informs people so that they are able to respond to the issues that are relevant to them and of great concern to them. Another part of the process is public consultation. Even what we are doing today, this is all a part of that. We were in Montego Bay last week, public consultation. There were excellent suggestions being made, because us here, we are not the repository of knowledge and wisdom. It's the Jamaican people, and you made an important point. This idea of republic, I don't think people understand what republic means. It means sovereignty of the people. It's not a political party or anybody with their it's the people. And so this is a kairos moment. Let me use that biblical term, where we as a people can define the kind of governance that we want in Jamaica land we love. There are weaknesses, for example, in how we are presently governed, in terms of accountability of those who govern us. And I'm expressing my mind frankly and bluntly. There are, as a result of that, issues such as corruption, crime and violence that are impacted by how we are governed. And we therefore need to understand, help our people to understand how the very foundation, which is our constitution, impacts those kinds of matters, and invite them then to be a part of this process of reform. So you hear me answer, Bishop. I'm saying public education, public consultation. That consultation will happen in different ways, focus groups. We need to go right across the length and breadth of this country. As to what timeline for that to happen, I'm not setting it, right? But we're going to have to agree on a realistic timeline before a bill can be laid, in my opinion, before Parliament.
Just to add, if you don't mind, the concerns about the timeline, those concerns are noted. If it is any consolation, there is a particular culture in Jamaica where we talk about issues a lot and we don't implement. A huge implementation deficit. And so the changes that David spoke about, they won't come if we stay with this form of government. So where we move to next by no means can be the end. But if we don't move there, we will never get on the road to make the other changes. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. We can talk all we want and agree all we want about those real challenges that we have. The insults that many of us endure because we become guilty by association. When Lord knows we come with clean hands and a good heart to use the best of what he has given to us in his service by serving his people. It doesn't matter what we agree to. If we do not take that first move of changing the form of government that puts us on the other road, none of it will flow. And David is absolutely right. I think why the people are so particularly jarred is because there are so many legitimate concerns that have not been addressed. And my fear is that we run the same risk of talking and talking and talking until we exhaust ourselves and then we don't make the move. And those of us who mean well may pass. And others may mean well, but they may focus on other things. I'm just saying, we can't do it all at once because the pastor is right. There's so much that needs to be done. But believe me, if we don't change the form, we will never get the rest of the substance to come. So that the timeline, ambitious as it is doable. But I recognize that there has to be a stepping back because there is a perception that does not accord with the reality of the work that we're doing. It would not have made sense for us to begin the public consultations without the committee first meeting to sort out our own thoughts on the matter. When we say we arrive at consensus to recommend, that's not the final stop. When we say that having looked at the options between an executive presidency and a non-executive presidency, we have a model that has worked in Jamaica, that has contributed to Jamaica being a stable democracy. We have an electorate that is extremely partisan, and once you talk about putting things to the electorate, they become encamped. And as Tom said, we need in this nation, suitable for Jamaica, an umpire, an arbiter. Every nation has a head of state and a head of government. Some have office holder, and those are the institutions that you call the executive presidency. We grew up hearing that the Governor General was a titular head, figurehead. That may have been where it started, but that certainly is not where it is now. And we have important institutions in the nation that are sensitive and must be staffed by people who are non-political in order to get the stability that has eluded us on other fronts. We don't need to get those embroiled in the partisan political process. And that is why, having looked at the recommendations, we too are of the view that keeping the head of state separate from the head of government, the head of state as a president and the head of government as a prime minister makes good sense in this Jamaican context. maybe somewhere down the road we may have greater maturity and our people may not be as encamped politically and we can move on from there. But there will be nothing to move on to if we stay with the monarchical form of government. Think on these things.
Yes. Bishop Russell, yeah. Just go ahead, son. Oh, just go ahead. Good. The question I'd like to ask, there was a previous group that was aiming to do the very same thing what this group is now doing. I'm wondering whether or not you're starting from scratch or you would have taken note of what happened and so carry the work on. And so I think if that is the case, then you would have been able to be reaching further than where we currently are at this time.
We are much further because we're actually building on the work done. And in fact, I hear some people ask whether the bill to make the change is already drafted. The answer is that because previous administration I think one member of the committee said a whole generation would have grown up since the 1990s and now. But more importantly, the matters that require referendum have not changed since the Independence Constitution was made. And I don't have any say in it and you don't have any say in it until we change the Constitution itself and decide for ourselves. So that it helps us that we're not starting from scratch. And the truth is, when people have spent good time to do something, it may not be wise to just throw it away and throw the baby with the bathwater. The work that you are doing as pastors, somebody will come and build on it in the same way that you are building on what your predecessors in office have done. We really are, what we are charged with doing is made a lot more difficult because of the high level of ignorance. And people are taking strong views on wrong information. Wrong information. The need for public education has been highlighted. The state of literacy and functional literacy is much bigger than the work of this Constitution. It's going to require a whole overhauling of the Ministry of Education, or system of teaching and learning, all of that. The question is, do we wait until that is done in order to get this part of the work done, or do we continue to take the steps? Because this part of government has to take one set of steps, while the other part of government take the step, and as a nation, we kind of move forward. As long as we're moving forward towards the right goals, it's progress. It really is progress. So the truth is that we have a dilemma. If we had begun this work without setting an ambitious timeline, people would hiss their teeth, because I heard many say, "Cho, not a thing going come." Mrs. Simpson Miller, during one of the independence anniversary, spoke so passionately. Poor Mrs. Simpson Miller, as well-intentioned as she was, come and gone. Mr. Golden, at least he was able to bring a significant part of the reform done over time, which included previous administration, PNP administration, at least. And what he accomplished under his prime ministership in implementing something is significant. In fact, having heard him speak on the matter, I made an adjustment. The most significant reform is the most consequential reform that we're now doing, because a significant reform was done with the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedom. Significant. So there are many, many concerns about the level of public education. You know, sir, it's so funny. that long before the committee was formally established, I went to the Parliament and I spoke about it. I spoke about the phasing of the work. Why did I use the Parliament? Because the Parliament is where you pass the law, because the Parliament is televised, because the proceedings are also archived, and you can quickly go and pull them up and see. You know, it's a good way of checking whether somebody now is just quickly making change in response. Go back and look on the parliamentary sitting of January 10, 2023, and you will see at every stage I have gone to the Parliament and to the people to say this is what we're doing, phasing, explaining the terms of reference. But Hugh Small here said something to me when the ministry was just created. He said, you know, your biggest challenge is that there is a distracted public. So a lot of the things, I'm learning so much about effective communication. I'm learning so much about ensuring that as far as it lies within me, I communicate clearly and effectively. You have to pardon me, it's still work in progress for me. Because some say I speak in legalese as a trained lawyer. And some things that are easy for me, I don't sometimes remember that it may not be. So in my constituency, one of my constituents said after the Montego Bay Town Hall meeting, so MP, by referendum, you mean that you go out in the community and you just canvass the views of the people and you hear who for it and who against it? And I'm like, no, the referendum is like a national election. She said, but MP, me just think, say, man, when you talk about the people, you just go and you just take the views of the people and you hear how it go and you make the decision. For me as a lawyer, when I'm talking about the Constitution and the process that is required to change it, I talk about deeply entrenched. Somebody say, oh, what that mean, miss? Me don't really know what it mean. So I too have to be stepping back to learn to break it down. But pastors, if there is nothing that you leave here with, I just want you to think as you go on to talk to your congregation. If we don't get on that road, all of the other changes, we're only going to be talking about them. It's a specific process by which the change will come initially. We can't change a whole culture overnight. But to change the Constitution and abolish King Charles III, King of Jamaica, and Queen Camilla as our head of state will require a bill going to the Parliament to amend the Constitution. That is a starting place. It's not the end of it.
My brothers and sisters, you will understand we have to wrap up by 12:30. The minister will come back and speak with us briefly, and we will have a summary of the issues by Dr. Nadine Spence and Mistress Laletta Davis Mattis. And then we will have to have the vote of thanks, and the chairman of the JUGC will come back to us for one final statement. You must understand, we're going to take two online questions to deal with it balanced and in a decent way. Can we have those two online questions?
Because in amending the Constitution, you have to be faithful to the process by which the Constitution says it is to be amended. So no, we're actually putting together the pieces incrementally. The goal at the end of the day is to come out with a new Constitution, but we can't do it all at once. A lot of things are involved in it. That's why I speak about the process being complex and involved. Time does not allow me to go into the details.
Thank you, Minister. Brittany Clarkton on YouTube asks, how can the Constitutional Reform Committee build consensuses among the people when meetings are being held in secret?
Okay, thanks for the question, and that has actually been almost a perennial question. So I'm not sure it's correct to say that the committee is meeting in secret, and let me tell you why. We recognize that the public engagement and consultation process has been running behind our work. We recognize that, and we are seeking to rectify that as we speak. And when we do the recommendations, the issues arising from the meeting, Dr. Nadine Spence will address those issues. So I think it's incorrect to say that we are meeting in secret. The minister, I think, outlined very clearly that the work of the committee initially really related to going through the previous recommendations on the previous commissions, addressing process issues that are in the Constitution, so that the critical matters really have not been discussed to the length that we would have actually expected them to be discussed in the time that we have met. We have had 8 meetings. Yesterday was our 8th meeting. The minutes are going to be made available. And again, the minutes have actually been running behind because all the members of the committee practically are otherwise engaged as a secretariat in the ministry, and that secretariat is expected to do some of the work. Those minutes will be made available. In addition to the minutes, the meetings are actually recorded by court reporters. That's what we call them in practice, court reporters, which means that the verbatim discussions are forming part of the record. Those records will also be made available to the public. So that's one. The issue of consensus building, I also think Minister explained that very clearly, that the notion of consensus does not mean that the committee has made decisions and that the decisions of the committee are now being put out to the public. That's not what we mean. When she explained, the Minister, she explained that consensus building within the actually means that there are matters that we are discussing, and until we believe that we have recommendations to make to the public, because remember, we are actually reporting to the government via the minister. But even before we do that, we want to ensure that the public is engaged. Since our meetings, I think about 3 meetings ago, we actually did have a press conference. And in that press conference, a number of issues were put out in terms of what are our recommendations. A lot of those issues are not even being discussed in the public. For example, one of them was who is a foreigner for the purposes of our Constitution. That recommendation was made as well, that we are proposing to remove the concept of the Commonwealth from the Constitution, because Commonwealth citizens have significant roles to play in our governance. But we know that many of our people are not merely Commonwealth citizens, they're also US citizens. So that was put out to the public. What are your views on those matters? Who can represent us in representational politics? If you're Jamaican and you go away and you have worked for a number of years and you want to come back and represent, what are the prerequisites for doing that? Should we have Commonwealth citizens still integrally involved in our politics? Those are some of the questions we put out there. We also did indicate some of our initial thoughts about what the president should or should not do. Those were just initial thoughts. The idea is that the public will take that up, run with it. We will come back, we will discuss, and then we can make our final recommendations after that. We recognize as well that there's a difference between public education, public engagement, and public consultation. Dr. Spence will outline in more clear terms what I want to say, Minister, that the committee operates within the context of government, in the sense that all government procedures are still attendant matters for which we have to accept. If we want to engage a staff member, that has to go through a process. So in relation to those matters, we just really want to assure the public that there is really no nefarious agenda at work in terms of the meeting of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you so much. One last question from the floor. Evangelist Errol Rattray.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman. I rise to Errol Rattray. Just rise to make observation. One is that timeline was what? There was a lot of discussion on timeline. There was a lot of discussion on communication. And Madam Minister, I saw a television program with yourself and on one of those stations, and I prayed for you. I prayed for you. And you would know that program that took place about Constitution. There are four main, I am leaving with us, the church, the political organizations, the media, houses with social media, and the entertainment community. Those four. As we go forward, could I ask that we set timelines for those three phases? We talk about phase 1, 2, 3. Can we set timeline so that the public is aware of what the specific dates for those timelines? I think we have generalized that there are 3 phases, but we haven't indicate date. Can we set timelines so we can say in 3 years, if 3 years we're working for, we'll have a referendum so that we can settle this thing? And that in the first year, we are taking care of what we call the communication via those 4 major platforms. Because when you speak, it's not the same thing like when some of them boy down the road speak. So the communication has to come from different level and package. So in the first phase, it has to be packaged in a way that the common man on the street, the boys out there, I'm a preacher, but there are some places, if I don't talk patois, they don't understand me. You understand? And so I'm saying let the first phase be one where the communication approach be of such that this entire nation understands it. Phase 1. And so we could say within 6 months or 9 months. It takes 9 months for a child to come. And I have felt that there's nothing that if you want to do, you can't do in 9 months, from conception to birth. That's one. So in 9 months, we could say communication, use a different thing. In the next 9 months, we could say phase 2. And then in the next 9 months, we must have recommend. But if we just generalize, so I'm saying set dates. Set dates. And that's a recommendation I want to make about timelines and about the style of communication. I believe, I'm going to King's House right after I leave here. I believe that if you set reasonable timelines, if you do the right communication with the church, with the media, with the entertainment community out there, and within the 2 political, you get it. And in 3 years, we can have Jamaica become a republic. That's my recommendation I'm making as the last thing that would say that in 3 years, I went to a meeting the other day at a certain place and they said, it's going to take 60 years. Nonsense. Within 3 years. And I would say, as I sit, at no stage of the game, whoever will come with the abortion argument and the homosexual and transgender argument, and I see some shake of head, that you're saying, yes, we will keep this country a Christian country. So God bless you. And the Constitution by 3 years' times this country become republic.
Thank you so much.
You need to say that. Bishop, I was shaking my head because that's not under consideration, no. All of those issues, it's not under consideration, no. And I speak as an independent person, and were it under consideration, I would be the first to tell you and shout out. Peace and love.
Let not thy heart be troubled. Fret not.
Thank you. I gather that we will soon be using our YouTube feed so that we will no need to be quick. Can you put this on? Thank you. So thank you very much. A lot of issues have arisen out of this consultation, and I just think we want to ensure that we have captured them carefully. But I'm going to start at the end because the issue of the timeline and the notion of why do we need to do the Republic Bill sooner than later, and the issue of whether or not we want to become a republic in the next 3 years. The answer to that is we have already discussed. Tom gave a long history of what this process has entailed over the years. And the question is, why would we wait for another 2 years to part company with the monarchy? Because that process is an antecedent to all the other processes that we want to engage with. And the other issue when it comes down to the timelines really has to do with what are those critical matters that need to be addressed now for us to say we are parting company with the monarchy, as opposed to that those other matters will be the subject of the other phases. I think we have recognized that this is the reformation of a constitution of this magnitude that we have taken on, the notion that we have mentioned, decolonization and Jamaicanizing of a constitution, dictates a certain process and dictates a certain level of preparation, hence the necessity for phases. Some of the other issues raised, and I'm not going to spend much time on them, the integrity of the committee, that has always been an issue, and I think we have answered that very clearly, that nobody here can be gagged, and I don't think we would have had this committee. Are we rushing? Again, the answer that we are putting forward is no, that we are not rushing. We are referring again to the history, and we will ask ourselves, okay, this process has been ongoing for a long time. What is the utility of waiting again? Let us get on. We recognize the need for public engagement, and we are committing to that. Is it necessary to remove the Privy Council as a final court? That issue arose, and Mr. Hilton did mention the position of the PNP, and the minister did represent the position of the current JLP. And the answer, as I gather, Mr. Hilton, is that whilst the processes for republic and the processes for getting rid of the monarchy, of course, and therefore becoming a republic, and the process attendant on the final court, whilst there are two separate constitutional processes, as far as the PNP concerned, whilst the processes may be mutually exclusive, they are connected, and that the party is going to insist at some point that it is seriously considered. And I also want to say, from the position of the committee recognizes that it's not just the call of the PNP or the call of the JP, it's the call of the Jamaican people. And I want to add here that we have many times said to ourselves, we are merely facilitators in a process. The committee members are facilitators, and I want to remind all of that we are also all Jamaicans. We have the same ancestry, we have the same history, we have the same generational issues to contend with, and we are all in favor of future generations. In terms of the integrity of the CCJ, those questions were raised, and we understand that, and there was a particular case that was raised that really had to relate to the CCG and the interpretation of the Constitution of Guyana to deal with cross-dressing. These issues are why it is that some matters cannot be rushed, because they need to be carefully interrogated with the other stakeholders. The coat of arms and the significance of the crocodile, we are considering the issue of the coat of arms. In fact, I will say, Minister, that the National Council on Reparations, of which I'm the chair, has for a long time put on the agenda, where are we going to retain the coat of arms, right? And in fact, are we going to retain the motto? So there are other issues that are not necessary for the first phase, but which we will discuss. The role of the president, executive and non-executive, the committee did make some recommendations as part of our preliminary discussions. Those discussions are out, and we are inviting public comment on what kind of president we want. I think one of the issues raised here is the lack of information and the fact that even the current Governor General is not merely a titular figure. And we will put that out as well. The issue of the we the people, I mean, I like that concept very well. Application relevance and the need for adequate information. And what about the undue haste? We have concluded it's not undue haste. I'm going to go through quickly, and I'm going to ask Dr. Spence to just deal with the public education rollout program. We also recognize Dr. David Smith mentioned Henry mentioned that the committee from day one recognized that the timelines were ambitious. And as he also said, we don't set the timelines. We signed off on our TORs because we had to agree. But the timelines were given to us, and we did indicate very early that we thought that the timelines were ambitious. In terms of the budget, the committee has also been asking for a defined budget, and we gather now that there is a budget, and we are also going through the government procedures in terms of how the budget is utilized, etc. Previous committees were established, and the work, what was done, the committee's work, that's another lengthy discussion, but I will go past that because I think we have dealt with that as well. Will the Constitution be revamped in its entirety? I think the minister has answered that. Her answer is no. We are putting the pieces incrementally. There are many issues that are arising nationally, regionally, and internationally that were not contemplated at the time when the other commissioners were the commissioners were debating how we amend the Constitution. Because in the Bill of Rights section that we have now, there are persons who believe that that ought to be reviewed as much as those provisions were recently amended. How can the committee achieve consensus? The committee meets in secret. I think we addressed that we are not meeting in secret, and there's nothing nefarious about our work. And can we set timelines and phases? I'm now going to defer to Dr. Nadine Spence. Thank you very much for accommodating us.
Okay. So we have met, this, as we said, the Public Engagement and Communication Committee was the first committee to be established, and it was established some 5 weeks ago. I chaired the committee, and the first meeting was at Swallowfield Chapel, courtesy of Dr. David Henry, where we met and came up with a program for engaging the Jamaican public. The first public consultation was held in Montego Bay, along with a stakeholders meeting with critical players in the Montego Bay community, the St. James community. So it was always the intention of the community, of the committee, to engage the wider Jamaican public. We have been a bit slow, I agree, but as the minister said, we also needed time to come to terms with the magnitude of the work ourselves so that we could be good representative of the depth and length of it. So we have a number of committee meetings in the parish capitals, and we want to have consultations as well, public meetings and consultations on some of the topics that we have discussed and are hoping that the public will weigh in on, such as reforming the Constitution more broadly, the role and power of the head of state, and we want to do them in different parish capitals. So you will look out for the notices, and we will publish extensively so that you can hear about the different meetings, but we don't want to keep them in Kingston. We want to go across the country. We have invited a number of the stakeholders who from before now had, involved positions on critical areas of the constitutions: JFJ, Jamaicans for Justice, Advocates Network, National Integrity Action, Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal. We have invited them to come into the committee to make presentation, critical civil society organization, at this stage of the work. And when we meet with them or when they come to talk to us, you will hear about those deliberations. We also invite private members from the public. You can submit a position, and people have been doing that. People have been sending to our emails and to us their positions on different matters in the Constitution. And so we encourage people to send their positions to our email. I don't remember the exact. Right. And there is also a WhatsApp number that people can communicate to us through. And we will be active on social media very soon, and we'll have a website that is in the process of being established. We also are going to be having reasonings with certain groups of people. So reasonings meaning that we want to, as a committee, sit and talk to certain groups that we think, civil society groups that we think are critical. So we have made requests, for example, to speak with the Crime Monitoring and Oversight Committee, a group of influencers called Acorn, and to speak to the Partnership for Jamaica. And we have a plan as well for engaging the Jamaican diaspora, and we're seeking to do so through established links with diaspora entities. As you would have seen, we have been in the media. We have been on Love 101 almost about 6 times since we started the work. We've been on All Angles twice. We had an observer exchange. We've been in the Gleaner. We've made ourselves available to the press. We had a morning breakfast with critical players in the press, invited them to come, and they asked for an off-the-record meeting where they asked all of these questions that you asked, recognizing the press as a critical stakeholder. We have been on every media outlet. Whenever members of the press ask for interviews, they're granted interviews. So we have not at all been doing our work in secret. And whenever questions are asked, we have been careful to answer. We have had a number of consultations as well. Our youth rep has been very active, going across the island and consulting with young people. I have been consulting with members of civil society, including some of those people who are upset and say we are meeting in secret. I've had conversations with them seeking to establish dates that we can meet with them. I met with the women's sector 2 days ago, seeking to find out from them which date they are available. So we've been doing the work towards ensuring that we are engaging a broad cross-section of people. And as we go into the different phases, the nature of the consultation and the engagement will change. So I think you don't have any need to worry. We are fully seized of the fact that we need to ensure that the Jamaican public is fully aware of all the work that we have to do and are doing. Websites, we are also going to go active on our social media pages, and the email is constitutional
reform at MLCA, that's Ministry of Legal Affairs, constitutional reform at mlca.gov.jm.
And the telephone number, 441-441-9097. 441-9097, right? And it's a WhatsApp number, so you can send messages. Thank you so much for listening.
Ladies and gentlemen, we call now to the podium the Honorable Minister to do her final.
I hope everyone has found this session engaging. And Pastor Rattray, thank you for your prayers. I said to the moderator of All Angles that the people were deprived of an opportunity to hear why the work was arranged the way it was arranged. And we've talked about it behind the scene. But as Dr. Spence and Mrs. Mattis Davis has pointed out, we have been consulting. We have been having a lot of meetings. Even the important meeting I had with the executive members of the JUGC, I think, clarified some things. But we recognize that everybody does not know what everybody else knows. And we are in a media space of instant communication. And we forget that we still have to honor processes. We don't sow and reap the same day. I particularly like your analogy about giving birth. So we actually set some timeline. The ambitious timeline for tabling the bill is because it will take about a year to go through Parliament. And then there is a time frame for the referendum to be held. And then we will come upon the end of the life of Parliament, and we didn't want it to get intermingled with the general elections. So those are the matters. Hugh and Donna Scott Motley shared some perspectives at our first meeting, which I will share with you, about how timelines matter. But the ambitious tabling timeline is because it will take about a year to get it done because of the process that the Constitution says you have to go through. And within that year period, there are opportunities for further education and consultation. And it's the actual bill that has to be approved, not just what we talk about. So even if we do the consultations before, we will still have to do them afterwards because it's the actual bill that is being approved, not the things that we just talk about. The next steps, we will publish where we will be going with the consultations, and we will make the minutes available. The committee members were in the process of confirming the minutes, which are checked against the verbatim records, and we will make them available to everyone. And I am convinced that you will be pleasantly surprised how much the issue of engagement that is effective and that has integrity has occupied the meetings of the committee. We were even told by Professor Albert, who is our international law expert, that there are 5 A's in effective consultation. You ask, you get the answer, you acknowledge it, you action it, and then you archive it. And he has shared so many important frameworks from a comparative perspective that others have used and will be very helpful. When the minutes are made available, you will see. But I really just want to thank you because I know the church plays an important role. Of the righteous availeth much. I will pass it over to the real pastor in the house.
Dr. Bailey, you open and we have you close. Vote of thanks.
Thank you very, very much. My job it is to say thanks, and indeed I'd like to say thanks for persons who have made this possible. The initiative by representative of the Jamaica Umbrella Groups of Churches, Dr. McCarthy, to have engaged this public consultation with the Constitution Reform Committee, and of course the willingness in keeping with their job description to facilitate this process, and we are indeed grateful. I want to thank the Jamaica Broilers Group. We had a meeting with them and they kindly allow us to continue the meeting in this capacity, in this fine, cold place, nonetheless. But they provided coffee and drink at the back, and we are really, really grateful to them for that. We want to thank those of you from the very onset who have made yourselves available to be here to represent your different and various organizations, church and Christian organizations, to facilitate this process, to let your voices be heard, your questions be heard, and indeed it's a tremendous opportunity that has been afforded us to engage in the process. I'd like to say thanks to the committee and indeed to this government who has taken the initiative now to make this a priority, and to say that at the end of the day, when the process will have been completed, those of us who sat in this room and who had the opportunity to ask questions can say, indeed, we were a part of the process. It has facilitated some things of which we are very, very proud. There has been a significant and profound display of the opportunity, the depth of the conversation. There's also, which was very evident, the invitation for dialogue. There's the dissemination of information. There's the affirmation of the competence of the committee and also the veracity of the committee, integrity of the committee. There's also the integrity of the process and the veracity of the process, which was underscored by us meeting here today. And then finally, which must be said,